she announced to our friend group. I'm leaving him for someone better. He's such a loser. I just said, good luck. 2 months later, when her someone better left her and she saw me with someone new at the bar, she started crying and left immediately. I 31 male had been with Amanda 29 for 4 years when she decided to blow up my life in the most public, humiliating way possible. We'd met through a mutual friend's wedding. I was a groomsman. She was a bridesmaid, and we got paired together for the processional. What started as obligatory small talk during the rehearsal dinner turned into genuine chemistry, and by the end of the reception, we'd exchanged numbers and plans for a real date. Amanda was a real estate agent with an impressive sales record and a personality that could light up any room. I was a high school history teacher who spent my summers coaching baseball and my evenings grading papers. We were different, sure, but it worked. She brought excitement and spontaneity to my structured world, and I apparently brought stability and calm to her chaotic schedule. Or at least, that's what I thought. Our relationship had its ups and downs like any other. Money was occasionally tight on a teacher's salary, while Amanda's income fluctuated wildly based on the market. She'd have months where she'd close 3 houses and want to celebrate with expensive dinners and weekend getaways, while I'd suggest we save some for the lean months. This created tension, but we always worked through it. At least, I thought we did. The friend group we'd accumulated over 4 years was a mix of her colleagues, my teacher friends, and people we'd met through recreational softball and trivia nights. About 15 people total who'd gather every few weeks for game nights, barbecues, or just drinks at Murphy's pub downtown. These people had become my social circle, my community. I'd hosted Super Bowl parties, helped friends move apartments, and been there for birthdays and breakups. That's what made Amanda's betrayal so devastating. She didn't just end our relationship. She weaponized our entire social network. It started about 6 months before the end. Amanda began working with a new client named Derek Chun, a commercial developer who was apparently buying up properties all over the city for some big mixed-use project. She mentioned him constantly. Derek said this. Derek thinks that. Derek wants to see another property. I didn't think much of it initially. She was always enthusiastic about big clients. But then the late nights started. Showing properties to Derek became her default excuse for missing dinner, for canceling our Saturday plans, for being too exhausted to talk when she finally came home. When I'd ask about these showings, she'd get vague or irritated. You wouldn't understand the commercial real estate market, she'd snap. It's complicated. I'm not an idiot, but I also didn't want to be that suspicious, controlling boyfriend. I gave her space, trusted her, and focused on my own work. Baseball season kept me busy with practices and games. I told myself I was being paranoid, that her defensiveness was just work stress. Then came the night that changed everything. Our friend group had gathered at Murphy's pub for Rachel's birthday. Rachel was one of Amanda's co-workers who'd become friends with all of us. About 12 people were there, crowded around 2 tables we'd pushed together, working through pitchers of beer and sharing appetizers. Amanda had been distant all night, barely talking to me, constantly checking her phone with this secretive smile. Around 10 p.m., she stood up and clinked her glass with a fork like she was making a toast. Everyone quieted down, expecting a funny birthday message for Rachel. Instead, Amanda looked directly at me and said, I have an announcement. I'm leaving him for someone better. He's such a loser. The table went silent. Someone dropped a fork. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, the air completely knocked out of my lungs. Everyone was staring. At her, at me, frozen in shock. Amanda, what the hell? That was Josh, one of my teaching colleagues, his voice tight with anger. She ignored him, still looking at me with this cold expression I'd never seen before. I'm with Derek now. He's successful, ambitious, actually going somewhere in life. Not stuck in some dead-end job babysitting teenagers for poverty wages. She grabbed her purse. Derek's picking me up. We're going to his place. I should have yelled. I should have thrown my drink. I should have made a scene. But I was so shocked, so humiliated, that all I could manage was, good luck. She laughed, this bitter, sharp sound, and walked out. Through the window, I watched her get into a silver Tesla. Derek, presumably, barely glanced toward the bar before driving off. The table erupted. Rachel was apologizing profusely, saying she had no idea Amanda was planning this. Josh was calling Amanda a string of names I'd never heard him use. Sarah, another friend, moved to sit next to me, rubbing my back while I just stared at my beer, trying to process what had just happened. I'd been publicly dumped, insulted, and humiliated in front of our entire friend group. My girlfriend of 4 years had just called me a loser and announced she'd been cheating on me with some rich developer. And she'd done it at someone else's birthday party, turning Rachel's celebration into the most awkward night of everyone's lives. I finished my beer in one long pull, stood up, and said I needed to go. Rachel hugged me, tears in her eyes, apologizing again. Josh offered to come with me, but I declined. I just wanted to go home, crawl into bed, and pretend this nightmare hadn't happened. The next few days were brutal. Amanda came by our shared apartment with Derek. Yes, she brought him to our home and packed her stuff while I was at school. She'd taken her things and, apparently, some of mine, my good headphones, a jacket I loved, and weirdly, my cast iron skillet. I came home to half-empty closets and a note on the counter that just said, "I'll send you money for my half of this month's rent." She never did, for the record. The friend group drama was immediate and messy. Most people sided with me. How could they not after that display? But a few of Amanda's closer work friends tried to stay neutral or suggested I must have done something to make her act that way. Those friendships died quick deaths. I didn't have the energy to defend myself to people who thought public humiliation was ever justified. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into teaching, spent extra time with students who needed help, and coached baseball like my life depended on it. My team made it to the regional finals that year, and those kids had no idea how much their enthusiasm and dedication helped keep me sane. I also started going to therapy. My insurance through the school district covered it, and Dr. Patricia Morris became a lifeline. She helped me process the humiliation, the betrayal, and the weird guilt I felt, like maybe Amanda had been right. Maybe I was a loser stuck in a dead-end job. "You're a teacher," Dr. Morris said during one session. "You shape young minds, inspire critical thinking, and provide stability for kids who often don't have it at home. If that's being a loser, the world needs more losers." It took a while, but I started believing her. 2 months passed. I'd moved into a smaller, cheaper apartment. I'd stopped checking Amanda's social media, a habit that had been poison for my mental health. I'd started running again, something I'd let slide during the relationship. Life wasn't great, but it was getting manageable. Then I met Keisha. We met at a teacher development conference, of all places. Keisha taught English at a middle school across town, and we ended up sitting next to each other during a mind-numbing seminar on integrating technology in the humanities classroom. We bonded over how ridiculous the presenter's suggestions were. No, we couldn't just gamify Romeo and Juliet with an app and expect deep literary analysis. We got coffee after the seminar, talked for 3 hours about everything from teaching philosophy to our favorite books to terrible dating experiences. She'd recently ended a 2-year relationship with someone who decided teaching was beneath him and wanted her to quit to support his freelance photography career. We laughed about how some people just didn't get it. Teaching wasn't about the money or prestige. It was about the impact. Keisha was smart, funny, and had this warm presence that made me feel comfortable in my own skin. We started texting daily, then meeting up for dinners, then actual dates. She was understanding about my recent breakup, never pushing me faster than I was ready to go, but also making it clear she was interested in something real. 3 weeks after meeting her, I asked Keisha to be my girlfriend. She said yes over Thai food and laughed when I admitted I'd been nervous to ask. "You're a catch," she said simply. "Don't let anyone make you think otherwise." A month into our relationship, Keisha and I decided to check out Murphy's Pub. I'd been avoiding it since that night, but she wanted to see where I used to hang out, and I figured it was time to reclaim that space. Josh and Rachel were meeting us there. They'd become even closer friends after everything, loyal in a way I hadn't expected. We arrived around 8 p.m. on a Friday. The place was packed, the usual weekend crowd filling the bar and tables. Josh and Rachel were already there, waving us over to their booth. Keisha fit in immediately, joking with them about the music selection and telling embarrassing teaching stories. I was happy, genuinely, surprisingly happy. Keisha's hand was in mine, I was laughing with friends, and for the first time in months, the weight I'd been carrying felt lighter. That's when I saw her. Amanda was at the bar, alone, nursing what looked like whiskey. She looked different, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes and hair that needed washing. She was staring into her drink like it held answers to questions she hadn't figured out how to ask. "Is that?" Rachel started, but I nodded. Before I could decide whether to acknowledge her or pretend I hadn't seen her, Amanda looked up and our eyes met. Her gaze traveled from me to Keisha, to our joined hands, to the way Keisha was leaning into me, comfortable and affectionate. I watched Amanda's face crumble in real time. She stood abruptly, stumbling slightly, and I realized she was drunk. Tears started streaming down her face as she fumbled for her purse, knocking over her glass in the process. The bartender said something to her, but she waved him off and bolted for the door, sobbing openly. The bar got quiet in that section. People had noticed, were staring. Some probably recognized me from that night 2 months ago and were putting the pieces together. "Should we?" Keisha started, her voice gentle. "No," I said firmly. "We shouldn't." Josh looked proud. Rachel nodded approvingly. Keisha squeezed my hand, and we went back to our conversation like nothing had happened. But my curiosity was killing me. What had happened? Why was Amanda alone and drunk at the bar where she'd publicly humiliated me? Where was Derek and his Tesla and his big success? I got my answers the next day from Rachel, who'd heard everything through the real estate office gossip chain. Derek had dumped Amanda after 6 weeks. Turns out he was married, something he'd conveniently forgotten to mention. His wife found out about the affair, threatened divorce, and Derek immediately ended things with Amanda to save his marriage and, more importantly, his money. Amanda had quit her real estate firm because working near Derek became unbearable. She'd tried joining another agency, but her reputation had taken a hit. Word travels fast in that industry, and homewrecker who breaks up with her longtime boyfriend for a married client isn't great branding. She'd moved into a studio apartment in a rough part of town, was barely making rent working part-time at a boutique, and had been trying to reach out to old friends for support. Most had declined, still angry about how she'd treated me. A few who'd taken her side initially had drifted away once they realized she'd been cheating with a married man. Amanda had traded a 4-year relationship and an entire social network for 6 weeks with someone who was using her. She'd called me a loser for being a teacher, but she was the one who'd lost everything chasing something that was never real. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a flicker of satisfaction hearing about her downfall. I'm human. The woman who'd publicly humiliated me and called me a loser was now struggling alone because she'd made terrible choices. There was poetry in that. But mostly, I just felt sorry for her. Not enough to reach out, not enough to offer support, but sorry in the abstract way you feel for anyone who's destroyed their own life through their own actions. A few weeks after the bar incident, I received a letter. Actual physical mail, forwarded from my old apartment address. Amanda's handwriting on the envelope made my stomach clench. I almost threw it away without reading it. Keisha, who was over for dinner, said she'd support whatever I decided. I opened it. The letter was long, rambling, and reeked of desperation. Amanda apologized for how things ended. Interesting phrasing, like it just happened rather than something she orchestrated. She explained about Derek being married, how she'd been misled, not her fault, apparently. She talked about how hard things had been, how much she regretted losing our friend group, how she'd made mistakes but had learned from them. Then came the real purpose of the letter. She wanted to meet up, to talk things through, to see if we could find our way back to each other. She promised she'd changed, that she realized what she'd had with me, that she understood now what really mattered in life. I read it twice, then handed it to Keisha. She read it, raised an eyebrow, and said, "What do you want to do?" "Nothing," I said. "I want to do absolutely nothing." And that's exactly what I did. No response, no acknowledgement, nothing. I recycled the letter and moved on with my life. Because here's what I'd learned in those 2 months. Amanda was right about one thing. I was exactly where I'd been before, teaching history, coaching baseball, living modestly on a teacher's salary. None of that had changed. But I wasn't a loser. I was someone who loved his job, who made a difference in kids' lives every single day, who had loyal friends, and now a partner who valued me for exactly who I was. I didn't need a Tesla or a 6-figure income or some impressive title to have worth. Amanda had chased what she thought was better, more money, more status, more excitement. And it had blown up spectacularly in her face because she'd built her happiness on shallow foundations. Meanwhile, I'd built mine on things that actually mattered. Meaningful work, genuine connections, and self-respect. 6 months later, Keisha and I moved in together. A year after that, I proposed during a school field trip to a historical battlefield. Nerdy, I know, but perfect for us. She said yes while 48th graders cheered in the background. I heard through the grapevine that Amanda eventually moved to another state for a fresh start. I hope she found whatever she was looking for. I hope she learned something from the experience. But honestly, I rarely think about her anymore. When I do, it's not with anger or bitterness. It's with gratitude. She did me a favor that night at Murphy's pub, even if she didn't mean to. She showed me exactly who she was and freed me to find someone who actually appreciated what I had to offer. Sometimes the best revenge isn't making someone regret losing you. It's building a life so fulfilling that their opinion of you becomes completely irrelevant. Amanda thought leaving me for someone better would upgrade her life. Instead, she downgraded everything while I found something genuinely better than what we'd had. And when she saw that at the bar, when she saw me happy with someone new, living proof that I didn't need her to thrive, that was the moment she realized what she'd thrown away. Not because I'd changed or improved or somehow won, but because I'd simply moved forward while she'd crashed and burned. I didn't plan that moment. I didn't orchestrate seeing her that night. But life has a funny way of writing its own poetry sometimes. And the look on her face when she realized I was fine, better than fine, without her, that was all the closure I needed. Good luck, Amanda. I meant it when I said it, and I still mean it now. I hope you figure out what actually matters. I already did.